The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday and it's a very big day for a lot of people. I know, people are leaving to go places, do things. A lot of people are going back to school, whether they've been back to school this week, they're going back to school next week. Some people starting school next week. So it's an interesting time of year. It's a time of transition, and that's sometimes a problem for those of us who are dealing with issues having to do with autism. So we're going to be here with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism. I always like to say that we talk about this from a 360-degree perspective, no matter where you are in this circle. I know if you're here that autism affects your life in some way. You may be a parent, teacher, practitioner working with an individual who's on the spectrum and loving them. You may be an individual who is on the spectrum. Whatever reason you have found us here, we welcome you here. This is really meant to be an informational show that's interactive. We want you to participate with us. We want you to tell us what you think. We want you to tell us what you feel, what subjects you want us to cover, and we want to help to empower you, because there are so many times that people hear the word autism and it strikes fear in their heart, or it brings upon a defeatist attitude of, oh, well, then that means that this, and this aren't going to happen. And we know that's not true. We know that everybody on the autism spectrum, and it's called a spectrum for a reason, everybody is an individual. They come to the table with different abilities, and sometimes those abilities are amazing. Sometimes they come with things that they need some help and support on to help them overcome so they can get to the good things. And we know that there are all kinds of things that we can do to overcome those obstacles, and that leads to all kinds of progress. Progress is the main word that we try to focus on as much as possible. What can we do to create progress? Sometimes it means just moving the dial a little bit, and sometimes it means making huge leaps forward. But we're here to help and support you wherever you are in this journey to make that progress. So Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact with us here on the show. I'm going to remind you that one way you can watch us live, just one way you can watch us live, is at www.autism-live.com. Now, I'll tell you what's good about going to watch us live. When you go to watch us live on Autism Live, and by the way, the show plays 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there. It will show you the most recent episode now. It's changed slightly, and for those of you who are fans of the show and have been here with us, you'll notice that things have changed a little bit. So I want to key you into some of the changes. If you go there, it's going to show you the most recent episode. How cool is that? And then it'll give you the playlist of all the other shows that we've done, so you can pick and choose. You no longer has to be this random thing of you see whatever it shows. Isn't that nice? I think that's a big improvement. We'd love to hear from you guys if you're loving it as much as we are. We did that because you guys said this would work better for you, so let's hear. We talk about things have to be reinforcing, and then you have to check back and say, does it really work? Is it really doing what you want it to do? But also on that site, when you go there, there's a white box, the long, thin white box. And that is your place to sound off. Take your cursor, put it there, and type away, hit enter. They give you 1,000 characters per comment, which is a lot, but if you need more, it'll refresh after you hit enter and you get 1,000 more. So send us as much information as you want. Let us know what's going on. Nobody on the show gives child-specific advice, because that would be a disservice to the child or the adult, because we give help and pointers for adults as well, but it's not person specific. However, a lot of times it can help you to sort through and ask more questions, know who to talk to next, know how to progress. But as much information as you give us, the more helpful we can be. And I also like to remind you that when you're putting information into that white box, remember that we don't know who you are. You don't have to log in, so it's completely anonymous. You can ask, even if it's a question that is really embarrassing to you, you can ask it. We won't know who you are. We don't get to say who you are. But if you want us to get back to you with something, if there's something that you want emailed to you, then you do need to include something in there that lets us know who we're talking to so we can get back in touch with you. And always, if you're watching, reference what it is you're talking about. On Monday, I don't want to forget this, we're going to have Dr. Mike Dorsey here with us. And he is an amazing expert in school placement. He is the expert in school placement in the United States. And so, if you have a question for Mike Dorsey, make sure that you write in, I have a question for Dr. Mike Dorsey. I want to know this. Instead of just saying, would you ask the doctor this? Because I don't know, do you mean Dr. Tarbox? Do you mean Dr. Najdowski? Do you mean Dr. Dorsey? Do you mean Dr. Graham-Pichet? We have multiple doctors here. And if you say, I was wondering, she was talking about this. Again, we got a lot of she's. So help me out, because as I always say, I gave up mind reading when I became an autism mom. I just didn't have room for all of those things, as I know you understand. And I am an autism mom. That's the other thing I remind you at the top of the show. I am not an autism expert. And I guess that's a relief to me, because I can run to people, as I did this morning, and say, hey, help me out with this. And I do have access to a lot of experts, and I have access to them on your behalf. So don't hesitate to ask me. My job here is to run and get you the answers. I'm an autism mom, former teacher, and passionate about making sure that our kids got help, because I saw what happened with my child. And boy, you deserve that and more. And all of our kiddos deserve that and more. I want to help you to get to the good stuff, because I have to pay that forward. No doubt about it. That's on my plate to do in this lifetime. So take advantage of it. It's all free. And you're not pestering me. If you meet me, or if you spend any time with me, I get really excited about finding ways for parents to find ways to help their kids, and I get really excited for young people to get the help and support that they need, and I know it's out there. Okay, so we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. That's right, the jargon du jour. This is when we take on those crazy phrases that the experts say to us when they're talking about autism that we go, really? What in the heck does that mean? Oh, my earrings just jingled. Okay, so today we're going back over a term that we talk about a lot. And it's really important that this be a part of whatever we're doing with our children. What am I talking about? Generalization. That's right. Now, this is one of those crazy words that we have that problem that it seems like a word that we already know. We use this, somebody says something, we say, well, that's just a sweeping generalization. That, that's not fair to say that about everybody, right? But when we're talking about it in terms of autism, it's not the same meaning, so it can be very confusing. Let's take a look at what our actual definition of generalization is. It is the occurrence of relevant behavior under different non-training conditions, for example, across subjects, settings, people, behaviors, and/or time, without the scheduling of the same events in those conditions. What? The thing about these kind of definitions is that it's a bunch of words that I recognize, but you put them all together and I go, what are we talking about? Let's look at our working definition and see. It's going to be a lot less specific, but let's see what it says. Being able to apply what has been learned in new ways or situations that were never taught. So the example I always give on this, and forgive me because it's one that I think works well, when my mom taught me how to drive, she taught me how to drive with the intention in her head that I was not just going to drive the car that I learned how to drive. She wanted me to be able to drive a stick or a manual transmission. She wanted me to be able to drive a truck or to drive a small car. She wanted me to be able to just shift with the thing to put something in park if it's up here, or do it on the floorboard. board. She wanted me to be able to understand where all the turning signals and everything were and what the rules of the road were on every road, not just the roads in my neighborhood. So could she possibly ever teach me everything in every circumstance that was going to happen having to do with a car or driving everywhere? There's no possibility that we could teach all of those things, right? But while she was teaching me, she was mindful of the fact, and she didn't even know about generalization. She was mindful of the fact that she was going to teach me some basics and that she was going to help me to achieve generalization with driving. So despite the fact that she never taught me how to drive a 24-foot U-Haul truck, I was able to do that this summer. I was able to drive that truck because I knew enough, and I was able to drive on roads I'd never driven before, even though she hadn't taught me how to drive on those roads. She taught me how to follow road signs and things that I would need to know so that I could put it all together and be able to apply that in situations that were never specifically taught to me. Stop and think about all the things that we want to do with generalization for our kids. And this is why generalization is so important. And it is so important that your ABA provider is talking about generalization and that there is a plan. It is not an afterthought to think about generalization. Generalization is something you think about before you start to teach a lesson. One of the biggest examples having to do with autism is when kids are being potty trained. You can tell the difference between an ABA provider who has planned for generalization for potty training and one who hasn't, because if the child is taught how to use the toilet and the child is able to do that successfully, but then is not able to do that in other settings. So the child can do it at home, but they go to Kmart and the child can't do it at Kmart. We didn't plan for generalization properly. Because if we were mindful of that in the beginning, we would teach the potty training in the home, maybe in the downstairs toilet, and then as soon as we get that under control, we take it immediately upstairs to the upstairs toilet, and then maybe the next day we take it to Aunt Martha's house, and then we go to Target and we do it in their bathroom, and then we do it in a school bathroom, and so we teach the child that we can toilet anywhere, because eventually the child is going to go to the bathroom in bathrooms they've never been before. How about on a plane? Right? And you want the child to be able to do their business regardless of where we are, who we're with, what time of day it is, right? That's what generalization is when you're able to do those things and demonstrate the ability to do them in all those different circumstances. We have to plan for it. Generalization, key. Okay. Moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. Our question of the day today, what would you like to change about your child's current classroom placement? This is high irony to me today because I left here yesterday, and we're going to talk about this a little bit today. You plan, you do things, you set your child up for success, you create circumstances in which your child can flourish, and other things change. And it's part of being an autism parent. I've learned this, and I learn it again, and I learn it every day over again, and I need it tattooed on my forehead so that every time I look in the mirror, I can see it. We plan, and then we go with the flow. Because my child's classroom is being changed today with very little notice, and I'm smiling about it because it's all going to be okay. And it's all going to be okay because my child has had the very best of ABA, and he is very go with the flow, and he can transition to different things. I, on the other hand, needs maybe a therapy about making transitions because I am a little like, about it. But honestly, I think it's all going to end up being great. It was not my choice, and it's not something that we have a choice about. I mean, you always have a choice, but the fact that he is having to leave the classroom that I shared at the beginning of the year that he was in a 5-6 split, and because of the way the numbers in the school they no longer need a 5-6 split. So the 5th graders are going to another classroom, and the 6th grade teachers are going to just teach 6th grade. And I have to take some big breaths about that. But would love to hear from you guys. Perhaps you guys would like to see some changes. I, on the other hand, did not want to. But what would you like to change about your child's current classroom placement? Is there something Do you wish you had an aide? Do you wish you had a different aide? Do you wish you had a different teacher? Do you wish that their classroom was in a different place? What about your child's current classroom placement would you change if you could? It's okay to dream. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that you need to go and fight for it. But if you could just dream, what would you want to change about it? Because we can talk about that a little bit later on about, how there are some things that we can implement and create change with. We always have a topic of the week, and this week in particular, we have been taking on the subject of inclusion. Even though we'll have a new topic on Monday, we're going to carry it over a little bit because the big expert on inclusion that I specifically wanted to talk to you guys about that, because he is the expert in placement for children on the autism spectrum, Dr. Mike Dorsey. He was unable to be with us this week, so he's going to be with us on Monday in the first hour of the show, and you won't want to miss that. But we are going to continue to talk about inclusion today, and we'll continue to talk about it with Dr. Mike Dorsey on Monday. It's a very important topic, and if you have thoughts, feelings, questions, concerns, we appreciate that and encourage you to write in on the live feed. I mentioned earlier that it's just one way that you can watch us live now, because you can also be watching us on YouTube. And there is a way for you to comment on YouTube. I don't completely pretend to understand that yet, but you can also be commenting on YouTube as well and asking questions on YouTube as well. That's our YouTube channel that you can go to watch. So send in your thoughts, concerns, questions. Some of the different things that are going on today in the studio, because it's Friday, and Friday is a very exciting day here. We will have our funding tip for you a little bit later on today. We have Real Progress with Dr. Adel Najdowski. She will be here in just a few minutes, and then a little bit later at the top of the second hour we have Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox. I know somebody had sent in a question for Dr. Tarbox last week. I have that all prepped and ready to go, and if you have more questions for Dr. Najdowski or Dr. Tarbox, now's a great time to be writing them in. We look forward to having that interaction with you. We are going to take a break, and then we will welcome Dr. Najdowski here. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mands, hacks, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It is time for real progress with Dr. Adel. Dr. Adel Najdowski is here. Thank you. I can't talk today. We had that problem last week. Maybe it's a Friday thing. Maybe it's something happened on a Thursday that's making.
Did you have the problem with Dr. Tarbox last Friday too, or just me?
I had the problem all day Friday, and do you know what ended up happening? I've been having allergy issues, and I don't know whether that's part of it, that I keep using the wrong word at the wrong time.
You said you thought you were having an allergic reaction.
And I did over the weekend. I've been taking more Benadryl than anything. I've broken out into hives. I don't know what's going on, but yes. But I think that's part of the reason why I'm Miss Malaprop.
Well, you look beautiful today.
Thank you.
Your hair is getting longer and it's looking curly.
It's unruly today. Let's call it what it is. It's unruly. I got a Brillo pad on my head.
I'm always excited to come here and see how it's grown.
It's this morning I was like, it looks kind of like a clown wig today, and it's got the feeling of a clown wig today. I don't know, but we always talk about progress, and there's progress to be had with my hair too, because progress is for everything. And we've been talking about inclusion all this week, but I specifically wanted you to come in and talk a little bit about what you guys refer to as EF, those executive function skills, because as we've been talking about inclusion and what works and what doesn't work, what I'm coming down to, what it's boiling down to me for this week is that a lot of times the difference of whether a child is successful in inclusion or not depends upon the child's ability to have executive function skills, because we've talked this week about how we have to prepare the teachers for inclusion.
Right.
But a lot of times when there's a stumbling block, it has to do with something executive functions. And I don't think that the teachers have been trained yet in terms of how to teach that. And I think as parents, we can be empowered to be working on that stuff at home outside the classroom. So I think of you as the EF queen. I don't know if I've shared that with you before. but you know, I've asked a lot of people to explain executive functions to me, and nobody does it like you do.
Oh, well, that's sweet of you to say.
Well, so explain executive functions to our folks watching at home.
Well, before I get into that, you just hit something that is standing out to me, which is that to get a child ready for inclusion, you might do a lot of things and think, okay, now they're ready. Like, what do you think the typical person probably thinks of when they have in their mind, okay, this kid's ready for inclusion? What is the kid able to do? He
or she is able to attend, to focus, and pay attention to the teacher, follow rules, successfully monitor themselves. So, because otherwise, you know, if they're in another classroom, there's direct one-on-one aides, and there are people who are prompting them every step along the way and doing stuff at their own speed. Yeah. So for me, inclusion means they've got to be able to manage themselves a little bit so that they don't disrupt the rest of the class. Okay. And can focus enough that they can be on task without being prompted all the time. So you just basically talked about a ton of executive function skills right there. Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about being focused. That's attention. Mm-hmm. There's lots of skills involved with executive functioning. All of them have to do with kind of organizing oneself, like things that we do to keep ourselves on track, things that we do to help ourselves achieve a goal that we have in mind. And we do these things, we keep ourselves attending to the right things, focusing, being able to do things for longer periods before we get bored with it or we can't handle it anymore. If there's distractions, then we have learned to ignore them. That's inhibition. Or if there's certain behaviors that we kind of feel like we have to engage in, we're able to inhibit and not do it, and we can wait until it's appropriate. You talked about self-monitoring and self-management. That would be simply, you know, if you have a behavior you know that you do and you don't want to be doing it, or there's a goal that you should do it less or something, you might monitor yourself doing that. Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head. The things you didn't mention was memory. Yeah. A lot of times in order to be successful, you have to actually be able to remember things. This is very interesting to me. Sometimes teachers will give instructions to children
So they'll stand in front of the class, they have an assignment, and they are explaining to the kids in the classroom, here's your assignment and here's what you need to do. Then she says, okay, everybody do it.
Right.
And then the child on the spectrum, while they understood the instructions, they're completely capable of actually doing the assignment. It's not that they don't have the skills to do whatever it is. They literally just sit there and end up not doing something, and that gets misinterpreted sometimes as non-compliance.
Right.
I've noticed that a lot with executive functioning skills, is that sometimes people actually refer to it as the child's being non-compliant. In reality, it could be literally that they can't remember.
Yeah.
So they have a hard time with that kind of stuff.
Right.
So they have to be able to remember and recall information. And it's a difficult area of things that you have to kind of like put together and intermix. But sometimes I think, more traditionally speaking, people will think, oh, this child's ready for inclusion because she knows her colors, letters, can read, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they look more on the skill level and they go, well, she's right on target with her grade level for skills, so
Yeah.
she should be included. But what they forget about is that in order to function in a classroom environment where there's lots of other kids and only maybe one teacher and an aide or two, you're in a completely different world. You have to be able to really be on top of your game.
And that involves all those EF things. Okay, so what I'd like to do is take a short break and come back and talk about how possible it is. I was in a conversation with a parent the other day who said, they were talking about focus, that it's a child who isn't on the spectrum, but talking about focus and how hard it is to focus, and that they were making the choice to go on medicine. And I said, are you aware, you know, I don't want to upset what you're doing, but are you aware of the fact that there are ways to go about this that don't involve medicine? And that was eye-opening to that parent. I think a lot of parents out there think there's nothing I can do about focus.
Right.
So I'd like to talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to come back after these messages.
For the month of August, I figured we'd do some fun in the sun activity. We're gonna make our very own frozen bowling game. It's super fast and super easy. I was inspired by some lessons I saw in skills. All right, so let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are water, water bottles, balloon, and food coloring, which is always optional. First step you're gonna do is make your bowling ball, since it'll have to freeze overnight. The first thing I'm gonna do is take my balloon and put a few drops of food coloring in it. This is optional. If you don't have food coloring or your child has an allergy to it, don't use it, but I thought it'd be fun to make everything super colorful. So, I have my food coloring. I'm gonna put a few drops in here. And then, take it to the sink and fill it up with water and tie a knot. Here's my balloon filled with water and the food coloring. I'm gonna take this and place it in the freezer with some towels, just so it holds its shape better. Our next step is to make the bowling pins. I have 10 recycled water bottles that I've refilled with water. Now I'm gonna put some food coloring in them.
Straight to the center at full speed. Light will surround you in a blink of an eye.
Now that my bowling ball is frozen and my pins have been filled with water, let's go outside and play with these.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
I hope you and your family have fun with the frozen bowling game like I did with my friend Emily. Well, until next time, craft on, guys. Bye.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Adel Najdowski, and I was saying before the break that I consider you the queen of executive functions and explaining them and talking them. So I've asked you to specifically speak about how we teach focus. This is a problem that so many of us have with our kids, and it doesn't matter whether it's a child on the autism spectrum or not. A lot of our kids have a problem with focus, and teachers feel like there's nothing that they can do if the child is having focus, and parents really feel like victims, like, well, it just is. So how can we teach better focus?
Well, when I think of focus, I think of being able to do a task for an extended period of time and not get too distracted.
Okay.
Or if you do get distracted to a normal degree, everyone does, you can get back to task, right? Is that basically what you mean?
That's basically what I'm talking about.
So this is an attending skill, essentially, and it doesn't just start right there. there's so many steps involved. Even starting at infancy, children begin the very first step, which is just noticing things in their environment. A lot of kids on the spectrum literally kind of almost walk around like with tunnel vision and don't even notice the things around them. First starting off just by, maybe presenting different kinds of visual or auditory stimuli and seeing if the child will attend to them.
Okay.
Remember, you've probably heard a lot of parents say, I thought my child was deaf.
Yep.
When I would call their name, they wouldn't even look, or like a train would go by and they wouldn't even look, or something like that. And so just seeing if they'll attend to things that are kind of more salient. Like if someone in the background goes, ouch, or screams or something, there should be like immediate attention toward that.
Yeah,
and so we're just looking for orienting to stimuli and even noticing them to begin with.
Okay, a lot of times parents will clang pots behind the child to see if they'll turn.
Yeah.
And think, oh my goodness, they're deaf because they don't with autism. But in fact, they can hear it, they're just not attending to it.
Yeah, and so you want to set up a sterile environment initially so that there isn't something competing with attending to this new thing. So don't have them play a video game or doing something that they really enjoy. Once they're, they can do that, then the next step is, can they disengage from something that's not sterile? So now you do bring in a video game or you bring in something that they really enjoy, and then you now present things and see if they'll still attend. But you got to make sure they're salient things. It's not like they should attend to every little thing.
So when you say salient,
things that are like unique or different or whatever that a normal person wouldn't notice. So like if I was in a classroom and all of a sudden, like I heard someone walk by and they dropped their paper or something, I'm not going to turn around. But if I heard someone go like scream in the hallway or a door slam or something like that, I would probably look, right?
Okay.
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 And so what we're trying to do is teach them to be able to disengage from something that's really reinforcing to redirect their attention to something important. In the classroom, the most important thing is what the teacher's saying, really.
Yeah.
So you start to teach them to be able to pay attention every time the teacher talks. Sometimes they won't. They're just going to be so fully engaged with what they're doing if they really like it. They won't pay attention.
And the key to this is making sure to reinforce when they do it?
Yeah, so you have to prompt it at first probably, and provide heavy reinforcement. And then, of course, with everything, you're going to fade out your prompts and you're going to thin out your reinforcement so that it just becomes something they can do. So now we know they can orient to things that are salient that they should be paying attention to. They can disengage when they're doing something really reinforcing. Now we want to be able to shift their attention. So they should be able to shift from like when the teacher says something and then maybe shows something, they have to be able to go back and forth between things. Between the whiteboard, they might have to copy information from a whiteboard down to a piece of paper. Sometimes kids literally get stuck at that point. Once they have to actually shift their attention from one thing to another and back and forth, they can't. They just break down.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to set up scenarios where we're going to make them shift back and forth between lots of things, and once they can do that with fluency, then we say, okay, great, they're good at shifting attention. Now, throughout all this, of course, you can also start working on sustained attention, which just means getting them to attend to something for a longer period of time. So like a really young kid, their attention span's very low. You shouldn't really have a high expectation on them. Okay. But as they get older, like once they're in elementary school, like first, second grade, they should be able to sit there and do a homework assignment for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you might have a child who at baseline, there's no way they're going to do 20 minutes.
Right, right.
And you're going to be, both of you are going to be screaming and pulling your hair out if you try to start with 20 minutes. So you don't start at 20 minutes, you start at whatever their baseline level is, and you slowly try to increase it and provide reinforcement for being able to do something for longer periods.
I think that's the key, is going slow and doing that reinforcement, right? I think that's one of the hardest
things. I think what people sometimes do is they forget to start where the child's at. So they go like, here's my goal, I want 20 minutes, so we're going to do this for 20 minutes, go,
Right.
But if the child can only do 5, then maybe start with 5 and make sure it's real successful and positive and they're having a good experience, and then go to 6, and then whatever, start to slowly increase to where they should be. Sometimes we don't necessarily know where they should be. People don't, it's not like it's intuitive to say like, oh, at this age they should be able to do it for this length. So just, you could observe in a classroom and watch what their peers are capable of. Okay. And get the idea from that.
And if you wanted lessons to be able to do step by step all of these things that you were talking about for, being able to shift attention and focus and all those things, they are all available in the skills curriculum, correct?
Yeah, and one last one I do want to mention, because I think this is really relevant for a classroom setting, is for them to be able to do divided attention, which is essentially like multitasking. Yeah. And so imagine in a classroom that sometimes there's like 2 things going on at once. You have the teacher giving instructions while you're also trying to put your name on a paper or do something. So some kids can't do that. They can't do two things at once.
There are some adults who can't do that, Dr. Najdowski.
Well, actually,
You're right.
I'm going to argue and say that I think most people can't do two things at once.
I'm right there with you.
I don't really think it's even all that possible. I think what they're really technically doing is fast shifting back and forth.
Right.
Because I know if I'm trying to listen to one person talk and another one's going to talk, there's no way I'm going to hear both.
Right.
So when people say they can do that, I don't think so. I think they're shifting back and forth and hearing a piece of each.
Yeah.
But still, that's kind of what we consider multitasking
Yes.
and divided attention.
Yes.
So the child should be taught to do those things as well. So you can
Absolutely.
present like two things at once, and then take them, put them behind your back, and say, "What did you see?" or something.
Right.
And maybe one's an auditory and one's a visual. And I know that's kind of analog, but it's a place to start.
Absolutely.
And then get them to be able to do those kind of things in the classroom.
It's like developing a muscle. You do the exercises and you get better at it.
Yeah.
Certainly. And we could all get better at these things. It's
Right.
wonderful. Great tips for how to teach focus, because it is possible to teach focus.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to take another break, and we're going to come back with Dr. Najdowski. She has people, you guys write in from time to time with questions about skills, and Dr. Najdowski is one of the co-creator of skills, so there isn't anybody better to answer a question about skills. So we'll be back with that question after these messages.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome to the show. So the goal of today, we're going to make meatballs. Let's get started. So again, I'm going to take roughly a pound of my ground organic turkey, and I'm going to add in the secret vegetable. So if your kid doesn't like vegetables, don't cook in front of them, okay? Have them watch a movie or something. But you definitely want to make sure they're not watching, because then they won't eat it. So, and here we go with the egg. And our breadcrumbs. I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. If you think about kids' shapes and sizes, you want to think small shapes, small hands. So your oven should be preheating at about 400 degrees. We're going to kick into the oven here and look at our meatballs. I did flip them halfway through the 20-odd minute. So we'll put, just like Julia Child's, there's our finished product right there. These are good. Cooking is easy. You don't have to be afraid of it. But we want to hear from you. If you can let us know what recipes are important to you, maybe convert a recipe from a traditional flour or gluten-based to a gluten-free or an allergy-free, we're here to help. So you get to us, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook at facebook.com/autismlive, or reach out at Taka Now. So I know you're having a great day. I had a lot of fun cooking with you in the kitchen, but I'll tell you, before we end, I gotta have more meatballs. Have a great day.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Adel Najdowski for a segment that we call Real Progress with Dr. Adel. We had a question that came in the live feature. Shannon, you talk about the skills program a lot. What does it teach? Is it something that you would use for children who aren't on the autism spectrum? I do talk about skills a lot. I'm probably, arguably, I know there are a lot of people who are fans of it, but I'm certainly one of the biggest fans, and I do use skills at home. I think it's remarkable. The first time I met Dr. Najdowski was when they were showing skills for the first time to a group of people, and I always say it was like a life-changing moment for me when I saw skills. I just got so excited about what it was going to be able to do for people around the world, and since then I feel like it's unfolded in lots of ways that I didn't expect it to unfold, and I keep finding ways that I can use it that get me more excited about it. So I'm thrilled that you're asking that, but the question is basically, what does skills teach, and can you use it for children who aren't on the spectrum, which I think is a great question. Dr. Najdowski?
Yeah, skills is been developed for children going from infancy to adolescence. So first off, I want you to know the age ranges that it's capable of. Beyond adolescence, it's still very relevant because it teaches lots of skills that are necessary for planning and organizing yourself, and things that even adults have problems with. That's our executive functions area. However, it's not going to teach adult type skills like how to balance your checkbook or dating skills and those kinds of things, if that makes sense. But the 8 areas include social skills, motor skills, adaptive or what we might consider daily living, like brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, taking a bath. It also includes play skills, cognition skills, which has to do with all of the perspective taking stuff and being able to infer what other people are thinking and feeling and respond appropriately to that, as well as academic skills, and the last one is executive function skills. Executive function skills are all the things that you need to basically be successful in life. It's for goal-directed behavior. It includes being able to problem solve, plan, self-monitor yourself, be flexible, pay attention, remember, all of those kinds of things. So those are the 8 areas that it addresses. And what we did is look through all of child development and try to make sure we had skills for every single thing developing in typical development from infancy up to the adolescent age. And yes, skills can be used with any population. Anyone who basically has any deficits in any of those areas. And because we researched all of child development, we should be able to use the assessment to figure out what the holes are and then basically go in and fill those in. And one thing I do like to point out is that this is also a very good program, not only for your younger, lower functioning kids, but also for your extremely high functioning Asperger's kids. That's one of the things I think like with the tagline, it says autism, and I think sometimes people with Asperger's assume it won't be appropriate, but it actually has 3 areas that are extremely appropriate: the social skills, the cognition, and the executive functioning areas.
Really incredible. I remember the first time I heard about CARD, and I heard the phrase that was used here a lot was, "We'll get your child caught up and never let them fall behind again."
Yeah.
And as a parent, that was something I just got chills saying that. And I feel like skills is just another extension of that. Getting your child caught up. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. Getting your child caught up. Isn't that something we all want to do?
Yeah.
And it's a great way to do it in the convenience of your home, having that curriculum there at your fingertips whenever you want, and then use it in so many other ways. It's pretty remarkable. I thank you so much for being here and for the work that you continue to do for our kids. You work tirelessly, and you're always coming up with other ideas of how you can help us to be able to get progress. So I think that's pretty miraculous, and I appreciate you. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm getting all the clumped here. Anyway, we're going to say goodbye to Dr. Najdowski. We'll see you next week, and we're going to take a break and come back to see you in just a few minutes. Stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up. She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? Well, what Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know. In most manuals, you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I wanted to talk about funding. That was my plan. And today's whole theme is you have a plan and then other things happen, right? And because a question just came in, and I was just saying I sort of wish I had Dr. Najdowski back in here because Dr. Tarbox is coming in a few minutes, but I'm going to throw this out there because if you're watching and you just put this question up, my child was just diagnosed with mild autism. He is 3. My question is, what do we do now? What is our next steps? How do you find therapies, and what is ABA? Well, first of all, welcome. That's what I want to say. I want to say congratulations to you on being a parent who is so on it and asking all the right questions. And I'm thrilled for you that your child you've already gone and gotten a diagnosis and your child is 3 and you're saying, what do I do next? Because you're going to be an on-it parent and you're going to do a great job. And I'm thrilled for you that at the age of 3, you know, you're here. And I'm going to answer the first question first. What is ABA? ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. It is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And it is now being widely covered by insurance companies. And the reason why it's being covered by insurance companies is because there is so much data. There have been so many scientifically approved studies that have shown how effective ABA is that insurance companies have to pay for it in a lot of places now. And very soon, it is our expectation that all insurance companies will have to pay for it because it has been shown to be effective in treating autism and creating progress. So that's what I want you to know about ABA. There's a lot more to know about ABA. It is not something that was invented to treat autism, but it is very effective at treating autism. It requires a time commitment because if your child is 3, even with mild autism, and I think this is really important to talk about, even if your child is on the mild end of things, at the age of 3, don't let people tell you then they don't need very much. That would be like saying to somebody, you just have a little bit of strep throat, so we're not going to give you the whole prescription. It would not be effective. It's great that your child is doing well enough that you're getting a mild. That's fabulous, but it still means that your child needs to be caught up as quickly as possible. And that's what quality ABA can do. you. So in terms of what your next steps are, you want to get hooked up with ABA as soon as possible. And by that I mean right now. I don't know where you live, I don't know what state you're in, and I don't know what the current state of autism insurance reform is in your state or what your insurance provider is. And all of those things are going to have a bearing on what you do next. But as a parent, and I'll ask Dr. Tarbox to weigh in on this as well so that you get a parent perspective and you get an expert perspective as well. As a parent, I would tell you that one of the first things that I would do is go to the Center for Autism's main page, centerforautism.com, and go on the locations tab and look and see how close you are to any of the offices that they have. Because if you are within 30 miles of one of those offices, I would tell you not to mess around with anything else. Immediately call their 800 number. And if you get a person immediately on the phone, tell them Shannon sent you. Tell them I was watching Autism Live and Shannon sent me. If you leave a message, you can leave that as well. You don't have to. But they will get back to you. A lot of times they're on the phone with somebody else and they'll get back to you very quickly and start to figure out the next step, and they will help you to figure out the insurance. So if you're within 30 miles of one of those offices, that's sort of the easy answer. If you're not within 30 miles, I would say to you the next best thing that you want to do, write me and tell me what state you're in. Maybe we can get you sorted out as quick as possible that way. Some other things that you might want to consider, I always tell parents that are newly diagnosed that a couple of things that you want to get involved in as quickly as you can is getting yourself a local parent support group and a more global parent support group. You want to be able to talk to other parents in your area and say, who do you all go to for ABA? What's the funding situation? You don't have time to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch to figure out what's happening in your community for autism. You might miss out on something great. You might miss out on somebody who gives grants that could make the difference of your child getting the treatment sooner as opposed to waiting for the funding to kick in. So for me, I have a local support group that is TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. It's TACA. You can go on any of the big Yahoo groups. You can go on Google groups. You can go on Cafe Mom. You can go on Facebook and search, put in your community and put in autism and see what comes up. There might be a group that's already there. I would tell you, you never want to take just one parent's opinion. You always want to take a poll because everybody has different experiences with things, and you'll feel more comfortable if you know. And by the way, you're gonna want that resource for so many reasons. You're gonna want to say, we need to go to a dentist. Who do you guys know already that's good? It's gonna save you making 45 phone calls to dentists saying, hi, do you have any experience working with kids on the spectrum? My child has sensory issues about X, Y, or Z. Somebody's gonna say, oh, this dentist is great, and they're gonna work with you. This pediatrician is great, they're gonna work with you. This teacher is great. This school district is better than this one in terms of working with this. This speech and language pathologist is great. This place to go to get your child's haircut, they're going to be they have reinforcement for your child there. So you want that local support group. Then you want one that's a little bit more global. TACA, by the way, has more global ones as well, where you have a forum, and Facebook is filled with these more global ones where you can have a forum in which to ask other parents questions. We're a resource that you can ask questions of experts as well, and you always have me to ask as a parent, but I think it's support-wise great to have the local and the global support group in place for you. Okay, so what do you do now? First thing you want to do is make sure that you're getting hooked up. Sometimes there's a waiting list for ABA, so I would say don't let today pass without. You can always get on a waiting list, and if you find out that everybody prefers this other ABA provider, you can switch to that one. You can just put yourself on more than one waiting list. The key is to not get you want to get quality ABA therapy. So you're not just going to settle for anything. Make sure that you get reviews on the ABA provider, which is why I said if you're near a card office, you can do that, and I know you're going to be taken care of. some of the other things that we talk about, and there is a talk that we do sometimes on the show, I think you can search it about, my child was just diagnosed with autism, I think is the title of the clip, that has a whole bunch of things to consider. Another big one is making sure that your child is healthy in general. When your child does ABA, it's going to be, the whole principle behind ABA is that they're going to reinforce your child and encourage behaviors that you want to see more, skills that they want to build. They're going to reinforce those skills. They're going to teach them and reinforce them. They're going to reward the child for doing things that are help them to learn. And they're going to help you to figure out at home for things that your child is engaged in, behaviors that are challenging. They're going to help you to figure out how we're going to stop making that rewarding for the child. Your child might be tantruming right now because that's the only way they have of communicating their needs. And your ABA provider is going to help you to figure out how we're going to build skills where your child asks for the things they want, either through language or pointing or signing or exchanging pictures. And they're going to help them to decrease this desire to throw themselves on the floor to get what they want and show them a more effective way to do it. So in a nutshell, they're going to increase behaviors you want to see more of, decrease behaviors you want to see less of, and they're going to do it through rewarding good behavior. So if you've heard things about ABA that are to the contrary of that, that's what good ABA does. And it helps to get our children caught up. When children are diagnosed with autism, almost always they are behind. And we were just talking with Dr. Najdowski about getting them caught up, and we need to do it as quickly as possible. This is why doing something as soon as possible is important, because right now at 3, your child might be a year behind at one skill, a year and a half behind on another skill, 2 months behind on 5 other skills, and we need to get your child caught up as quickly as possible. If we wait till your child is 4, they are that much further behind, and it's that much harder to get them caught up. So time is of the essence in getting your child in quality ABA therapy. You're going to need support for you. I said that I was going to start this with a funding tip, so let's talk about the money issue about this next. The ABA, a typical prescription for ABA for a 3-year-old is to be in the highest success rate. You would want to be between 25 and 40 hours a week. I know, everybody take a breath. 25 to 40 hours a week. When somebody said that to me the first time, I went, oh my goodness, that's a full-time job. We're talking about a full-time job for my child and for me, and you start to feel the panic. But so many people have done it. I want you to know how infinitely doable it is. And once you see what that amount of time for your child can do, not only for them now and today and next week, but when they start kindergarten and the rest of their lives, you're going to get so excited you're not going to know what to do with yourself. And then you're going to want to tell other people about it as well, because it makes that big of a difference. That big of a difference. My child, in 1 year of ABA, my child wasn't mild. My child had severe issues, but went from they wanted to put him in a classroom where basically he would have just been hitting his head against a wall and he wasn't communicating, to being in the highest placement and being able to be included the very next year. So even a year can make a big difference, but usually the prescription is between 2 and 4 years for a child on the autism spectrum. And we really want to hit it as early as possible because school's coming up. You want to get your child as ready for school as you can. And once school starts, there's less hours in which to intervene to catch up, right? So it's expensive. ABA is expensive, but there's all kinds of funding. There's insurance. Depending on which state you live in, you may have an insurance mandate which forces your insurance to pay for it. You may be in a state that doesn't have an insurance mandate, but your insurance company may already be covering it because they have coverage in other states where they've said, we're going to pay for it in California, and they don't want the lawsuit later on in your state, so they may already. More and more insurance companies are doing that. And sometimes in states, if there is no insurance provider, there are other resources. Here in California, before we had the insurance mandate, we had the regional centers who were paying for it. So it really becomes an issue of where do you live and what is your insurance. If you are working with a quality ABA provider, they will help you to sort that out. If you call the Center for Autism because you're within 30 miles of one of their locations, they will help you to sort that out. They'll call the insurance company for you and come back and say, here's what it covers, here's what your copay is, here's what your deductible, if there is one. I would also say to you too, if you don't live within 30 miles of an ABA provider, if you don't live within 30 miles of CARD, and you look around and you search ABA provider in your area and you come up with nothing, that is not the end of the road. CARD has a service that they do with people all over the world who don't live within 30 miles of their offices, where the person, almost like the super nanny, comes to your home, trains you, trains a staff of people to be able to do this intervention in your home. So that is equally a possibility and very successful. Please don't be overwhelmed. The thing that I want to tell you right now is that there is so much help available for your child. We just have to figure out where to plug you in as quickly as possible. And I'm totally happy and willing to help you with that personally, to get you started and get you off. Okay, and the person has written and said, we also have no speech, and you live in Illinois, about 30 minutes from St. Louis. And I'm going to double check. I don't think we yet have an office in St. Louis, but we have services in St. Louis. I know we do. So it might be best if you, on the live feature, we're going to a shoot right afterwards, but if you want to send me your phone number, you and I can be talking and we can see and that might be quicker. And then you can give me more of the specifics about insurance, and we'll figure out, because if you're in St. Louis, I don't know, sometimes there's a lot of states right there. And I don't know which state, but you said you're in Illinois. Okay. So you should have insurance reform, and likelihood is that your insurance will cover ABA. And then you've also asked about how to explain autism to his siblings. That's a big one. That's a very big one. And I think I'm going to wait and talk about that with Dr. Tarbox. So don't go away. We're going to keep talking with you. And if you want to, send me your phone number so that I can hook you up with myself and some other people and start to get you some help as quickly as possible. But when we're going to go to the A word right now, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how you language this with siblings. But this is all doable. Don't get overwhelmed. You're in the right place. The A word that's coming up is an ongoing documentary of a little boy who started ABA therapy when he was 2. Jack Riley is now 4, but at this point in the series, you can see he's had the benefit of 1.5 years of ABA therapy, and you can see, I think we might be approaching 2 years at this point in the series, and you can see some of the things that he is working on with his therapist right now, and what a lovely thing this is in your home, this intervention. So take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
At 9:00, you go potty, and then you can have the iPod after you go potty.
First, we have to go. No, later we can go potty.
If you do it really fast with no crying, you can play with the iPod.
Again.
Okay? But if you cry and you do it slow, no iPod. All right? He has to use the bathroom with no behaviors and do it not really fast, but in a good amount of time versus lagging and crying and tantruming and prolonging what he has to do. And if he does it quickly and fast, he gets his reinforcer. If he doesn't, then he doesn't get his reinforcer, so he learns. We're hoping he learns it the next time. If he does it quick with no behaviors, then he gets what he wants every time. So we're going to try to go past that hump like you did with everything else, like the feeding, and if you remember that, and the safety and the walking outside, like all of that. So this is just a little bump in the road. I think will be cool. So we'll see how that goes today. Hopefully it'll go good. It's 9:00. Let's see if we can do it fast, and then you can have the iPod. Let's do it.
There you go. Does somebody get to play iPod?
Yeah.
Yay! Hey, did you do the potty with no crying?
No.
No crying, right? And did you do it fast or slow?
Fast.
Yay! So what do you get?
iPod.
Yay! I hear someone.
Hi.
Hi. Who is it?
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
What brings you here today, Diana?
I just wanted to come and see Jack Riley and make sure everything was going smoothly.
And how often does that happen?
I try to come out and see Jack Riley once a month during a home session.
You're playing with the iPad.
I have to make sure I get all your learning stuff in here.
I made a jack-o'-lantern. No, what'd you make?
Elephant.
You made an elephant! So cool, Jack. Yeah, so with Mom and Dad, the bathroom occurrence with behavior is still happening. But we did it with Dad today. It was a lot better.
Dad did it? Okay, good.
But nonetheless, it still happens when we're not here. So I was thinking maybe we can fan ourselves out and just be outside the bathroom.
How much prompting does he need to actually get through, like, the motions? Is it getting through the motions, or is it just the behaviors?
Yeah. He can do everything.
He can do
by himself.
it. Are you doing that nicely or not nicely?
Doing it nicely.
I don't think so. You're crying. So were you doing it nicely or not very nicely?
Not very nicely.
Yeah. When you wash your hands, should you be crying or not crying?
Not crying.
You know what? I want you to show me how you wash your hands nicely. Okay? Let's go. That was so much better. Jack Riley, that was awesome. That was so good. Do you want to go upside down?
Yeah.
Okay. No crying when you're going potty. Okay? Are we gonna work on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's it.
I know, that's the point.
Oh,
That's the point. Again? So let's play with that. So let's take videos of him going potty. Well, it'll kind of be a baseline. So if he cries, if he gets upset, review the video with him afterwards. And then talk to him about if it was nicely or not nicely, and then try again.
Okay.
And we can keep reviewing the videos.
Some of the things I want to comment on, you know, each child with autism is different. But in this case with Jack Riley, you know, they're trying to get this whining and this crying about things a little bit under control. But you notice that while they're letting him know that this behavior, he's at the point where he has enough language and receptive language that they can have a discussion with him when he was littler. And you can watch, Emily's showing you the link, you can go back and watch before when he was young enough that he didn't have receptive language, how they dealt with those kinds of things. But now they can have a discussion with him about it. But what they want to do as much as possible is reward the absence of the whining. So they're pointing out to him, making it clear to him, you know, this is what the behavior looks like. They're even videotaping it, showing it to him and going, look, this is what this is. And what we want to see is when that isn't there. And then he gets all these rewards. And you notice that when they're talking to him, he's a child that he reminds me a lot of my son, that he likes a lot of I can't say that word, proprioceptual, I can't say it. They like to be squeezed. You know, Temple Grandin, who is a very famous person on the autism spectrum, she invented the cow squisher thing for herself so that she could be squeezed because it felt good. Now, all people on the autism spectrum don't like that, but some people do. It does something for them that's very pleasurable. And so you notice she's talking to him and she's squeezing his feet because he really, really likes that. That's really rewarding for him, reinforcing it, keeps him focused. And then, you know, you notice she picks him up by his feet because he really likes that. Now, all kids don't like that. It's a matter of finding what the child does like. Some kids like to be tickled. My son liked to have his head squished, that we just every once in a while put our hands on his head and just, you know, apply some light pressure, almost like a scalp massage. And when he was little, things would start to happen. I would say, come here and I'll squish your head. And he loved to have his head squished. As my son has progressed, now he's 10, it's not necessarily appropriate for, us to be squishing his head, and I'm certainly not going to massage his feet in public, and soon they're not going to be able to lift Jack Riley up by his feet, right? You find other things that are more age appropriate. And I remember when Jem was getting ready to start 3rd grade, he likes to be hugged too. And when you're in 1st grade, hugging your teacher when you're feeling a little bit anxious or whatever, very appropriate. Not as appropriate in 3rd grade, and for sure not appropriate in 5th grade. And so he was taught how to do something really appropriate, like just, to stand and give himself, that guys can be doing a massage to their arm and they're still cool. So he'll do that. What he does now is he does a little hand massage, and sometimes he'll do the cracking the knuckles thing, that he'll be sitting in class and he'll be doing this, which is a 5th grade boy kind of, it'll translate the rest of his life, but that helps to keep him focused, is doing those kinds of things. And if you think about it, there's nothing inappropriate about that. We all do those kinds of things. Some of us, have one knee going, or they're the people who click their pens endlessly, or, gesture wildly, whatever it is. We all have things that we do that feel good for us and keep us on track, whether we realize that that's what it's doing, but that is what it's doing. So, they're finding their way to decrease the behaviors that they don't want from Jack Riley and increase the behaviors that they do want for him. And that's what ABA is all about, and finding the way for it to be rewarding. It is not a punishment-driven intervention at all. We're focusing on rewarding behavior we want to see more of, or rewarding the absence of behavior rather than punishing and doing endless discussions, even showing the video. See, you see it? Okay, so that's whining, just defining it. But we don't get into these things of, whining is bad and you're not going to do it anymore and da-da-da-da-da. That is not ABA. So that's a particularly good video to watch. I'm just looking at the live feature here, seeing what else. Okay, great. We got a name and a phone number. And you wrote that you just happened to come across this program. I'm so glad you found us. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to take a break here, and we're going to be bringing Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in, and we're going to bring him in on this. And there was somebody else who'd written a question specifically for Dr. Tarbox. And I'm going to ask him to talk a little bit about, his advice as an expert to get you started, because his advice will be absolutely invaluable. But you're in good hands. So glad that you're here. And I also want to say, too, that there's probably other people who are watching who have these same questions and we're feeling squeamish about asking it. And I always remind you guys, ask your questions, because somebody else needs to hear the answer, too. So you're being of service while you're asking your questions. And all of our kids need help, and all of us as parents need help. I was in the same position that you are in one day many years ago, and other parents helped me. So it's my mission and privilege to be available to help another parent. And I always say, if I can save you 5 minutes and $5, then I can sleep tonight, because people did that for me. So stick with us. We're going to take a break. We'll bring in Dr. Tarbox, and we'll have him on the job. Stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mhm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in just a minute. He just got held up at a meeting. But the good news is it gave us time for just a second to talk about this really important story in the news. There is a young girl who is a first grader in Ohio who uses a service dog, and her mother, who is Charla Gretz, said that a school official told her on the first day of school this week that her daughter, and she's 6 years old, her name is Cheyenne, and her black Labrador Retriever Spring, who is her service dog and calms her with her sensory issues, and I'm guessing from the report went to school with her for kindergarten, but now in this first week of first grade, the school official called the mom and said that she could no longer come to the school that she's been going to because the teacher that is assigned for the room that is appropriate for this girl is horribly allergic to dog dander and will be unable, the dog can't be in the same room. And so the well-meaning school officials said, so we're sending your daughter to another school and she'll have to ride on a bus to go to that other school. The mother is saying that it's going to be additional bus time, which is not good for this child who doesn't deal with buses and doesn't deal well with change. The mother is saying that it's going to be another hour on the bus. The school is saying that it's only 5 miles away from the other school. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. And so the mother is pursuing it with the school district. And this kind of situation, I don't know about the rest of you, but this makes me a little crazy because it makes me infuriated when a school says it's not that big of a change, the child won't have difficulty dealing with it. And I realize that legally they need to protect the rights of both the teacher and the child, right? So they're in a hard spot. But if the school that they want to transfer the girl to, and there's an appropriate setting there, is only 5 minutes away, then why aren't they just switching the teacher that's there with the teacher who they wanted to have her have at the school setting? To me, that would make a great deal more sense. If we're protecting both people's rights, this teacher still has a job, and then we ask a teacher, an adult who drives a car, to drive 5 miles out of their way, because if you put a child on a school bus 5 miles out of the way, we all know that the bus has to stop in multiple places, and that is at least another half an hour. So to me, it's unconscionable that we constantly ask for the children, and in particular kids with autism that have a difficult time transitioning, to be the ones to bear the brunt when something is wrong. Why not just move the teacher? I don't know whether that has been raised, but to me, if it's only 5 miles away, yep, she's going to have to take her classroom supplies and get them moved. I'm just going to guess that there are a group of parents. If I lived in Ohio, I'd be happy to go over and carry the milk carton box of things over to the new school and help her set up her bulletin boards there. I realize it's an inconvenience, but the teacher is going to be much more adept at moving than the child who is 6. So I hope that Cheyenne and her dog Spring, who is clearly essential to her success at school, are able to figure that out, and that this school district will buy a vowel. We'll only hope, and try to get in touch with the mom to see if that has been suggested. And we'll all keep breathing and going with the flow. We're going to take another break and come back and have Dr. Tarbox join us. Stick with us.
Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies, so we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too. These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take them out of the house, put them in the car, drive around, just to calm them down.
I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something. This is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family. It just so happens that somebody from our older daughter's private school called us out of the blue. She introduced herself and she says, "I know that recovery is possible." Those words so early in our journey were a guiding force for us. As we got more educated in knowing what is effective therapies for kids with autism, we realized quality ABA is vital to that progress. that's where we decided that CARD was the right provider for us and for our son. Justin responded very well to therapy. The behaviors were tracked, and we saw that what was being instituted was working.
Justin, what are you doing?
I'm coloring.
You are coloring. Good for you.
There was real progress, and it was progress that was tangible.
I just remember when he made a sentence, he said a sentence. We were just happy about it, going, no way, I can't believe you just did that.
What's the date?
The 18th.
18th of what month?
December.
Oh, what year is it?
2007.
Oh, okay, so how old are you today then?
5.
The therapies that CARD did for Justin didn't just impact his daily living skills, but it was a positive impact on our entire family.
I'm Justin. I am in 4th grade. I like playing video games sometimes. My dream to build a teleporting machine. Like sometimes if like we're on an airplane and it's like really long, you guys just say, "Oh, hurry up with that teleporting machine. We're waiting on you." And I just started Friday Night Lights. This is our 3rd game of the season, and it's pretty fun. You have to be fast.
We attribute so much of Justin's recovery to CARD. Their goal was the same as our goal. We wanted Justin recovered. June 12, 2008 is a day that I celebrate every year because that is the day that Justin was deemed recovered from autism. And Dr. Doreen Grandpichet met with us, looked at him and just said, he's brilliant. You need to keep his mind stimulated because he's very smart and he has no residual traits of autism.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So thrilled to have in the studio with us Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You are also the director of the Autism Research Group.
That's correct.
A lot of important credentials, and we're so thrilled to have those credentials here with us. You have extensive experience. Well, thank you. You have extensive experience working with children on the autism spectrum and know a great deal about research. We have a question that came in last week for you that we're going to go to in a minute. But we've been talking to a parent, a mom. She's now disclosed herself as a mom. And the question that she first sent was, my child was just diagnosed with mild autism. He's 3. My question is, what do we do now? What is our next steps? How do we find therapies? What is ABA? I took it all on from the parent perspective, but I promised that we would get an expert perspective.
Sure.
I also would like to...
Research expert. You're the parenting expert.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm a parent. We stopped there because otherwise, I don't want to get into any kind of trouble, because the minute I think I know what I'm talking about, my child proves me wrong. But in any case, they've also given us some more information about where they live, that they are in the state of Illinois, outside of St. Louis. They've been through some early intervention for speech, then diagnosed in May, but left with a bunch of questions, which to me, we know this happens. I think it's unconscionable that people could say autism and say, nice talking to you, and not help.
Right.
But we take what we can. They're concerned about, they've been turned over to the local school system and what they do now. Right. So where would you like to start? I'll make room.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say my heart goes out to you. It's going to be a really tough time, for them. But I do want to say it only gets better from here.
Yep.
The diagnosis is probably one of the most challenging moments you'll face in your entire life as a parent, right? But it does get better. There are things that can be done. There is hope. And there is real hope for real progress and real change. So that's the first thing, most important thing to keep in mind. And then the next thing is the research is very clear on what works the best. And that is 30 to 40 hours of one-to-one ABA-based treatment for at least a year, ideally 2 to 3 years, maybe more. And it's real clear. There's many, many studies published in legitimate scientific peer-reviewed journals that demonstrate that this particular treatment model is what produces robust effects. In other words, it works. Your child will learn. Your child will make progress. Challenging behaviors will decrease. Skills will increase. Independence will increase. Happiness will increase.
Yeah, for everybody.
Right. And all kids are capable of learning, and all kids can make progress. So that's the number one thing. Now, if they're in the St. Louis area, it sounds like more or less. We don't provide services there, but I can, if they, give us their contact information, I can put them in touch with some folks in that area.
Okay.
John Guercio is one guy in particular. He's very active in the ABA community in the St. Louis area. If he doesn't provide the particular services that she needs, he certainly would know who to put her in touch with. So I would like to connect them.
Okay.
He's a great guy. So that's the first step, is finding intensive services. Now, another thing to keep in mind is, depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you things like, well, okay, put your kid in this daycare or this preschool or this early intervention center or this whatever program. That's going to take about 20 hours a week of their time. Then maybe do another 5 hours of this other therapy, then another 5 hours of this other therapy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, throw all the ingredients in together, and now the kid's day is full. And all of those different ingredients are supposed to help the kid, right?
Right.
Or at least that's the intention. But when research has actually examined that model, which they call it an eclectic model, which means a little bit of everything all thrown together, it hasn't shown that it actually produces gains. Almost all of the studies that have evaluated that model have shown that kids either stay flat or actually sometimes decrease or regress in their skill development. So I would say, keep an eye out for that. That is the model that's going to be recommended to 99% of parents out there, and that model is not supported by research. What is supported by research is 30 or more hours per week of one-on-one, high-quality ABA-based intervention. It doesn't matter if it happens in the home, or in a preschool, or a clinic, or a center-based program, or a public school, but it has to be implemented by people who are experts, experts in ABA, and are being trained and supervised by master's-level expert clinicians who have years of experience.
Which means you have to have someone called a BCBA working on the case, a board-certified behavior analyst.
Ideally, yeah.
And we've talked before about what are the hallmarks of when you're getting great ABA, and so they can search that topic on YouTube YouTube because we've done other shows with you about that. But you're going to help them to speed up that process by hooking them up with somebody who's going to steer them in a direction
That's right.
that they're going to get hooked up with.
That's right. And through that process, they're probably going to talk to a lot of different people who say, yeah, by the way, I do this, ABA treatment. And think of it as an interview process. They should be interviewing these different providers saying, what are you going to offer my child?
Right.
How are you going to evaluate whether or not what you're doing actually works?
Yeah.
How are you going to be responsible for effectiveness? And how are you going to be accountable for actually showing that it works?
Yeah.
And they should be able to walk you through that process. And they should have very clearly outlined procedures for demonstrating effectiveness. And we all know kids in good quality ABA programs learn every day. So every single week there should be something new that your kid can do this week that he couldn't do last week, that he learned in the ABA program.
And that's a big hallmark of whether it's a quality ABA
That's right.
provider. Okay, a couple of things that I want to add to the mix that she wrote in and said, he has no speech. Now, I'm assuming that means that he is not speaking, not that he has no speech services. So if I'm wrong, please write in because I'm watching what you say. But one of the things that jumped out at me right away is that they said that the diagnosis is mild autism. And what I'm hearing a lot from the parents is that people are saying mild autism, and then they're going to continue on along. Even though the child is 3, they say, well, the child has mild autism, which means you don't need that 30 hours.
Right. And
what would you say to that?
That's completely incorrect and unsupported by research. There's actually very little, the truth is there's very little research that has examined the effects of ABA or any other interventions separately for children who are more severely affected versus less severely affected by autism. There's very little research that has done that. But in the one study done by Tris Smith, who did specifically look at that, they actually found the strongest results in the kids who are the most mildly affected. So it's the opposite of sort of common knowledge, which is, oh, he's mild, so he doesn't need much help. The opposite has actually been shown in research, is that the kids who are most mildly affected actually do the best from 30 to 40 hours a week.
Okay, so anyone out there who's listening, don't accept that half prescription that we keep hearing about, people saying, oh, well, they prescribed 10 hours of ABA or 15 hours of ABA. If a child is 3 or 4, we really want them to be in that. I was saying 25 to 40, but you really think 30 to 40.
Yeah, and sometimes people define intensive as 25 hours per week, sometimes 30. The original study was 40, but really the important point here is every moment that a child is in a good quality ABA program is an opportunity for them to learn, right? And how do you get good at something? Practice, lots of practice. So just like if you want to learn a new language, you go to that country where all they do is speak that language, because that means you're practicing 24 hours a day, right?
Immersive.
It's immersive. Same thing with an ABA program.
Okay, really important. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, she's also asked, how do I explain autism to his siblings? So we're going to throw that at Dr. Tarbox and see what he can come out with. So stick with us.
And we are here for our inclusion film camp for military children with autism and their siblings.
It was great. We had quite a few returning, but 30 new kids. It was great. We're creating a network, the Inclusion Network, and all these kids are unbelievable. It just gets better and better every year.
Joey Travolta suggested me that I get to teach the animation to some of the people on the autism spectrum. The software I am teaching them is called Flip Boom Cartoon, which is a basic animation software. My favorite part of the teaching is to see Buddy's best work and their special abilities.
It means a lot. It's really collaboration. And I'm proud to see him so social and just not shy anymore. And I think that's really been important to me. And he's blossomed, and I'm just so proud to see that.
Did you love the camp?
Yes, I did very much.
This camp is like a really good book that you don't want to end.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us the fabulous Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And don't laugh, you are fabulous. You should own that. I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says, I am fabulous, Shannon said I am. Because you are, and you're such a great resource for the parents, and you speak all over the place. There are a couple places you're going to be speaking coming up. And if you have an opportunity to be there and hear Dr. Tarbox speak, it really is an amazing thing, because you are that rare rare bird that you know so many things about autism, but you're able to talk to us about it in terms that we can understand as parents.
Thank you.
And to hear that also from a male perspective, I don't know, there's something extra soothing about that. There are a lot of men who are in this field who don't have a good bedside manner for autism parents, and that is not the case for you. You are
Thank you.
the creme de la creme. And we all the time get parents who say, you know, I saw Dr. Tarbox speak, and that's why I came and did this, or I came and did that. You're very motivating, and you're very parent-friendly. So thrilled to have you here. And I don't want to leave this conversation without saying, for the Autism Research Group, one of the things that you ask is for parent input all the time.
That's right, yeah.
You're asking for people to fill out on your website surveys about what kinds of things they'd like to see research done
That's
on.
right, absolutely.
Okay. And that website again is?
www.autismresearchgroup.org.
Okay, great. Now, this parent that we've been talking to online has said that newly diagnosed 3-year-old and wants to know, how do I talk about autism with the siblings?
Right, yeah. That's a tough one. And I don't have any real personal direct experience on that one, but, you know, I think like anything with parenting, you want to focus on the positive as much as possible and try to make life fun and exciting rather than naggy and laborious and tiresome. So any way that you can kind of build fun and adventure into the family dynamics and the interactions would be good. I mean, there are certain things that some kids on the spectrum are particularly good at. Maybe you can spin that into a superpower or something, you know. A lot of superheroes in comic books have some kind of disability, you know, like the head of the X-Men is in a wheelchair, you know. You know, so, you know, like even the Incredible Hulk, you know, is a superhero, but his sort of major weakness is he can't control his anger. So, I mean, there's kind of some metaphors there, maybe, you know, that, you know, little Jimmy, you know, is a really smart kid, really bright, really great kid, but has a real tough time understanding, you know, how other people are feeling, or you know, he's really smart, but he has a really tough time telling us what he's thinking, right? So it's not that it isn't in there, and it's not that he doesn't care. It's just that he doesn't speak the same language. He has his own special language. I don't know, you know, something.
But I think the idea of being creative with it, because we say at the start of every show that no one on the show gives child-specific information because it's too hard. We couldn't possibly know. It'd be a disservice to the child, and it kind of depends on, you know, what are the behaviors that the child is engaging in, what are the ages of the siblings, and what kinds of questions they're asking. You know, that for an older child, maybe sitting down with a book and reading through some of the things like that. But for a younger child, I love this idea of, you know, that it's a superhero kind of situation, because we have to put it in terms that they can grasp. This person is different, not less than.
Right, exactly. And the fact is, this person is really good at some stuff, probably better than anyone else in the family, you know, and it's totally legitimate to focus on the positive.
Absolutely. And that it's going to morph with time, that the explanation of it is going to change with time.
The main thing, though, is giving as much or more positive attention to the sibling as you do time and attention to the kid on the spectrum, right? So that they, I mean, and we all know that, but it's a lot easier said than done, right? And maybe it takes practical planning, like literally making a to-do list. Like, what am I going to do today to make my, you know, my other child know that he's just as important as the kid on the spectrum? You know, make a to-do list, the top 3 things I'm going to do today. Maybe you literally have to do that every day. Maybe it's not enough to just remind yourself. Maybe it has to be making concrete plans.
I think that's great
Whatever
advice.
it takes.
I think that's great advice. That mom did write back and said that, no, what she meant was that he is nonverbal. And she said the people who diagnosed him said he severed a 34 on the autism test, and wanting to know what that means.
Okay. So there's a lot of different autism tests, and it probably depends on which specific one that her child
and it would have been done
on.
in May. So, you know, I would venture then that would be the old, because we would be in the new.
Yeah, but the tests don't even necessarily line up with the diagnoses.
Right.
So it's all a bunch. Look here.
Because for everybody who knows, the criteria of autism changed in May.
Right, in DSM,
so that makes it a little bit more convoluted.
Right, and most of the tests, autism tests, like the ADOS or the ADIR or the MCHAT chat. There's a bunch of others, diagnostic tools, diagnostic tests, were not actually developed for the DSM-5, the new one. A couple of them were actually. Most of them were not. So it depends. But the important take-home point here is whether or not you're right above or below some cutoff on some test, really, honestly, at the end of the day, is irrelevant. What matters is, what are your child's strengths that you can build on, and what are his areas in need of support, his or her areas in need of support, and how can we address those? That's all that matters, right? And how can we make life fun while we do it, and try to enjoy our lives as parents and as a family.
Absolutely.
It's not about what cutoff on what test or anything like that. And frankly, it's not even about the label. Mild versus severe, it doesn't matter. Verbal, nonverbal, whatever. It's what can my child do today, and how can I build on that to make him more independent, happier, and more able to function tomorrow.
I think that's so important because as parents, when the diagnosis comes across, you want to reach out and grab onto something. So what are we talking about? Because if you just go Google autism, the amount of information is too much. So you want to grab onto something, and maybe the thing that we need to grab onto is how far behind is my child, and what am I going to do to get him caught up?
Right, absolutely.
Him or her, because there are many more boys on the spectrum, but there are many girls on the spectrum.
That's right.
Okay, so great advice. I love all these things about making sure that we don't get caught up in the label.
Yeah,
enough other people will get caught up in our child's label. We don't have to.
That's exactly right. And frankly, we're going to get caught up with enough labels about ourselves in our own life and the way we evaluate ourselves and our spouses. We don't. So as much as we can get away from that as possible, the better. And frankly, there's no real substance to mild autism versus severe autism versus PDD, autism, Asperger's, any of these things, high functioning, low functioning. There's no real substance to that. All of that is just labels that people use to try to get a hold of things, to try to understand what's going on better. But frankly, it doesn't mean much. It's about what can we really do to make a difference today.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily mean where your child's going to end up.
No,
either.
absolutely
not. And that's the thing to really be aware
of. No, of course, and that's probably what parents are most concerned about, right? Is, well, mild versus severe, what does that mean for my child's future? And I'll tell you, whatever label your child on the spectrum has, the only thing that any of that means is, how can I maximize my child's potential? And the sad fact of the matter, and the anxiety-provoking fact of the situation is, we don't know what the future is going to bring.
Right.
We don't know what the outcome is going to be. All we know is, do the most that we can.
Right, and that progress is available, and that your child will make progress, but nobody can predict how much or when or where your end point is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Great thing. I want to stop there and go to a commercial, because when we come back, I want to get to that other parent's question, which is really lengthy, and there's new jargon terms in it for me that I don't know that Dr. Tarbox is going to explain to all of us. So stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. I said we were going to go to the new question, but we had a couple of follow-ups here. One more thing, how do you explain it to the extended family?
Right.
Because that's the next phase, right? Once you explain it to the siblings, you got to explain it to the extended family. And you know, I remember that initial set of phone calls that my husband and I made to explain it to my mother and his brother and our friends, and that's hairy.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's walking on a cargo net.
It is. It's very challenging because, of course, what all the extended family want to focus on is how great this kid is, and they love him, and they don't want any labels placed on him or her, right? Yeah. And oftentimes extended family have this sort of false perception that if I put a label on my grandchild, then that must mean they're bad in some way. Yeah. And that's just not the case, right? Yeah. All the label does is say this kid needs some extra help, and he needs some extra support, and get some funding to provide that support, right? That's all the label is about. Yeah. It's not bad or good. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the kid. It's just, okay, the kid needs some extra support. I find you're going to get a lot of denial, and you're going to get a lot of pushback from extended family, and they're gonna sometimes judge, right? They're going to say, why are you so worried about? He's just a kid. He's going to be fine. Why do you have to make a big deal out of it? That kind of thing. You know?
Exactly.
And if you can predict which extended family are more likely to be like that, I would take it easy and not really push the issue with them.
Right.
You know, it's not really an emergency. They don't need to know immediately. It's not a big deal. All that needs to happen is you provide your child with the support they need. But when it does come time to explaining it, I would recommend, again, kind of focusing on the positive and saying, basically framing it as he needs a little extra help. Yep. You know, not the end of the world. He is going to be okay. He's going to learn. He's going to do great. But he needs some extra support, and we're going to be there for him.
The thing I remember the day that we got the diagnosis, and the first person I called was my mom, and I had not told her that we were getting him tested. So it came out of the blue for her, because I didn't want to go through that discussion, because I was going to get a lot of pushback and denial. Right. And I called her and I said, hey, I want you to know we just came from the doctor's office, and Jem has been diagnosed with autism. And my mother started to wail, and she was like, no, not our baby, as if maybe it should be everyone else's baby but our baby, right? Yeah. And in that moment, it made some, I took some perspective and went, okay, like, you know, her reaction helped me to formulate mine in a more productive way. And I said, Mom, he is the exact same child he was yesterday when he didn't have this label. Right. All we know now are some more avenues that we can go down to get him the help that he needs. That's all. Same child we loved yesterday. Exactly. We're in the same boat. We're just going to get him the help that he needs. This is all good. You know, and it is challenging. Maintaining a sense of humor is absolutely key.
It's a really good point.
Because people are going to say, we did one whole show once about stupid things that people say about autism you're just not going to believe. Write them down in a little notebook and remind yourself you have a higher mission than dealing with what other people's emotions about what just happened to your child. And they will have emotions about what you just found out about your child.
That's right.
And they're theirs. You don't have anything to do with that. Somebody else wants to know here, is there any good video study or training, or if you can come up with something for bus drivers? They need training.
They really
and thank you very much. Yeah, that's a really good point.
You know, it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and we're just so busy with all the different trainings we're developing, we haven't gotten around to it yet. But in fact, maybe it was a discussion that you and I have had in the last year or two that really, to really have a comprehensive approach and to really keep kids safe and supported, everyone in the school district needs at least some training, right?
Even the ladies in the lunch
crossing
line.
guard, the lunch line, the bus driver. So we haven't developed anything, but yeah, I think it's really, really important to do. It wouldn't have to be anything really extensive, but even just some basic common sense strategies to help kids be successful. Everyone knows bullying is a huge problem on school buses, and of course bullying happens to kids with autism and other disorders at an even higher rate. So yeah, very, very important. I don't know of anything, and I wish I had something useful to offer, but I
don't know of anything specific for bus drivers, but on IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, they have trainings that are for parents, for teachers, and for people who work with children. They're segmented into 3 different areas so that they're more specific. And there might be a part of the parent training that would be good for a bus driver to take, and a part of the teacher training that would be good. And I'll have Emily put up the address where you can go for that. And these are trainings that are videos. You did some of them.
That's right. Yeah.
And they're experts in the field of autism with there are topics, and you can pick the individual topic to do the training. They start as low as $7.50 a training. And if you watched one for yourself and said, this would be great information for my babysitter or my mother-in-law or my child's school bus driver, you can share that with them then, and you've already paid for it. So that's a great place to look and start and find out some answers to your question in a very cost-effective way.
Very customizable too.
Yeah,
it's all
you watch it at home.
Just take what you want.
Yeah, you take what you want. You don't have to do a whole bunch of explanations for things that are not what you're dealing with right now. And you can, because you then own that video, you get to download it, you can start it, stop it, come back to it. You know, next Tuesday you go, I don't remember what he said about this, I'm gonna go back and look. Really efficient way, and there might be something in there, depending on what the issue with the bus driver that you most want to address with. So there is that. Okay, I did want to get to this other question that we had. I'm going to share this on the screen right now because it's pretty lengthy. I have a question for Dr. Tarbox. My son is 4. He was diagnosed with autism at 2. He has unexplained hypotonia. Am I saying that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and ataxia, plus a genetic factor. He has a duplication of 17q24.3. I can find very little information on the genetic aspect and would like to know how important you think it is to find a genetic research study to place this duplication on the autism map. Also, if a child has autism and a genetic issue, do you think the parents should have genetic testing to gather more information? And they said, thank you.
Right. So lots of questions there, lots of information.
That's an informed parent.
Yeah, it is a very informed parent.
I love it.
So first of all, and of course I always sound like a broken record, but it's the truth, and that is whether or not your child has an autism spectrum diagnosis, in addition to another genetic diagnosis or other comorbid diagnosis, it doesn't change the fact that all kids are capable of learning, right? And so the focus again should always be on skill development and how to create a supportive, intensive environment for my child to learn the most that they can, to build skills, to build independence, and that's equally true for a child with this genetic disorder. Now, I'm not, I always like to point out to the audience, I'm a behavior doctor, not a medical doctor, certainly not a geneticist, so this is not exactly my area of expertise. But I do, and I'm not familiar with that particular genetic difference, but I do think that it is worth it in general to get full genetic testing done and see what else you're dealing with, because oftentimes these other genetic disorders are not necessarily related to autism specifically. It's not necessarily part of the cause of your child's autism. It could be unrelated. It could be something totally separate. And yet many of these other genetic differences do have other implications for medical care, things to look out for in the future, or things that are known about health care in the future. Doesn't really affect your child's educational program. You know, when it comes to what to actually do ABA-wise, makes essentially no difference. Although there is some interesting research to be done on that in the future. So far, though, what we know right now is all kids are capable of learning, and that's about all we know. I do think it's important to do this kind of research, though, and I would encourage parents to participate in research studies so long as there's no real risk to the child. And generally speaking, if it's just a blood test or a mouth swab, cheek swab, genetic test, it involves essentially no real risk at all to the participants as long as confidentiality is maintained, which it generally is in these studies. It's very rare that people have problems with these studies. So I don't know if I provided any useful information in response to that question.
I absolutely think so, because it is important. I think sometimes we get information and then we go, what do I do with this information? And so you've gotten this genetic information and trying to figure out what to do with it. But I think it's absolutely imperative we get the word out to parents. I know we did a show a while back where we had a guest on talking about the genetic components, and you guys are starting to pair with a lab that's doing some genetic testing, and why it's important for all of us to get our kids tested.
That's right. And so this particular lab is called Lineagen, and they do one of the most comprehensive genetic tests for kids who might be at risk for developmental disorders or who might already have an autism diagnosis. And it is able to identify many other comorbid, or comorbid just means in addition to or separate from genetic disorders, and so it is worth having done, either by Lineagen or some other similar lab. Again, it doesn't change a whole lot what you're going to do educationally and behaviorally for your child tomorrow, but it does change the overall medical outlook for the child's future, which you might as well be aware of.
And we recently had a doctor on to talk about Fragile X on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and he was saying this was just another reason on the pile of why we should all consider doing this, is that there are some genetic factors that they are seeing that it'll inform, what we want to do with the child medically, but in some cases they have seen that it is a marker that parents need to get tested for certain things because the parents are more likely to be susceptible to some health issues.
Completely unrelated to autism, right?
Completely unrelated to autism, and I went, really? That is fascinating to me. So having your child genetically tested could tell you whether you need to go and get important medical tests that could save your life.
Sure, that's right.
Amazing.
While we give that advice too, though, it's important to point out to folks that the way the human mind works is as soon as you're given a little piece of information, it's very human to think about that information too much and to start worrying about it, okay?
Right.
So that's
Good point.
major potential limitation or drawback to genetic testing is you might get a result that says something like, well, you have this one particular genetic variation which has a 0.05% association with breast cancer past the age of 50, you know what I mean?
Right,
and they say, well, what do I do about that?
Yes.
And then the doctor says, well, nothing.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Well, you might sit there and worry about it a whole bunch. So did that really make your life better, or now did it just give you another thing to worry about when you're already parenting a special needs kid, right? Right. So, you need to weigh and balance the sort of pros and cons of all these different options, and it's never a black and white issue.
Sure, absolutely.
Anytime you are going to do genetic testing, though, I highly recommend having contact with a certified genetic counselor.
Yes.
There's professionals who that's their job to talk to you intelligently and reasonably and rationally about genetic testing and the results. And it's a lot better to deal with one of these folks than to just kind of get results randomly on your own and try to figure out what it means.
Absolutely. I think that's really good advice. The one part of the question here where they're talking about finding a research study, we've talked about this a little bit before on the show. If you're interested in taking part in a research study, how do you find that kind of information out? Is there a place you can go?
Yeah, there is. So there's a website called clinicaltrials.gov. clinicaltrials.gov, and it's where all major clinical trials are supposed to register their study. And so it's a place where you can go to find out information about a particular study, or you can just type in the word autism or Fragile X, whatever other keyword, and do a search, and you can find ongoing studies that are registered with the government that are addressing that topic.
Okay.
So if you want your child to participate, that's a great way to take a look at it. You can also just use Google,
And if they're registered on there, can we assume that they're reputable, or do we need to be very aware as a parent and make sure?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing, but I wouldn't say that it certainly does not mean that study is a good choice for your child.
Okay.
It just means that, it's a relatively legitimate, usually university-based research group that's running the study. So it's not some fly-by-night shady thing, right? It's not that, certainly.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that it's a good idea for you to participate in the research.
Okay.
So and it doesn't say anything about the risk to you or your child for participating in the research.
So we
all
really
of that
have to
needs
be
to be
mindful.
weighed mindfully for each individual opportunity.
Okay. Really important, because Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, who co-hosts with me for that hour of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, it's so great because we have different perspectives on things, because Nancy is, throw caution to the wind and wants to know about everything and wants to try everything, and I'm like, I'm going to sit here and watch everything and let me know when you get signed affidavits that show that this is effective, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, and I'm a professional scientist, so my job is to be very skeptical and to not believe something until there's evidence, right?
Right.
Although it's also not my job to disbelieve something until there's evidence to disbelieve it, right?
Yeah.
My job is to be neutral until there's evidence, one way or the other.
Yeah, and I always want to suspend my disbelief, as they say, and say I'm open to all kinds of things, but once it comes to actually implementing with my child, I got to see a piece of paper that says that we tried this, but I'm aware of the fact that it was tried on someone, that some brave parent said, we're going to try this, and that there are wonderful people like Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson who say, I want to be a part of. Because you were a part of the study, that there was a study here, and we were asked if Jem could participate, and I said yes, absolutely. If it's something that we're already going to be doing, I want to be a part of that to help with the cause for more kids to get more access. And you guys do a lot of different studies here at at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
That's my job.
And parents are asked, we should say that, parents are asked at length about, do you want to participate or would you rather not? And you explain things quite well. And
thank you.
And you're very generous with your time and with your knowledge while you're doing it.
Thank you.
I remember way back when there was a study that you asked us if we wanted to participate in. I made the choice not to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified that you were going to hate me and that we would, because I was new to CARD and I thought, and they're not going to want to provide services for us. And that was not the case,
Yeah,
quite the
not
contrary.
at all.
That did not happen.
First of all, that's illegal. But second of all, it's just totally unethical.
But human nature, I was afraid that, that I would be somebody that you would never want to speak to, and clearly he speaks to me. So that's a lovely thing. We're really out of time, and I've kept you longer than I was supposed to, so I apologize to that. And for that parent, I have your phone number, and we have your name, and I'm going to give that to Dr. Tarbox as well so that we can get you hooked up with the people that he is aware of in St. Louis, and we'll get moving on this, and you and I can talk separately as well. We are leaving in just a minute to go to the Los Angeles Zoo. My child is going there with the family from the A-Word. We're having sort of an A-Word Autism Live play date.
Very cool.
So we're very excited about that, and we'll have that film for you somewhere down the road. It's many things to be edited, but we're doing a lot of fun things. I want to remind all of you that you can be watching the show in many different ways on our YouTube channel, and I encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's a great way that you'll get minimal updates about what's happening here on the show, and you can also go to our Facebook page, like us on the Facebook page. There is a place to sign up for our newsletter as well that comes out once a month. You will not get spammed.
Newsletter. I love it.
Thank you. Emily does such a good job on it. She is absolutely brilliant at it. It's just one page. It's informative, lets you know what's happening here, and sometimes we have giveaways on the newsletter that we have things that we're giving away. So we're out of time. We'll be back on Monday. Don't forget, Dr. Mike Dorsey is going to be with us on Monday talking about inclusion. You're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you then. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.